Welcome to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast, where we aim to help fellow veterinary rehab therapists increase their knowledge and elevate their practice. I'm Megan Kelly.
And I'm Anae Lloyd. Together, we bring you the latest insights, research, and information in the field of veterinary rehabilitation.
This podcast is brought to you by Onlinepethealth, a leading continuing education membership for veterinary rehabilitation therapists. With Onlinepethealth, you will have access to a wide range of online resources to help you stay up to date with the latest techniques, advances, and trends in the industry.
Our podcast features in-depth conversations with leading experts in veterinary rehabilitation. They share their own experiences and knowledge to help you improve your practice. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the field, our goal is to provide you with the tools and the insights you need to succeed.
So join us as we explore the exciting world of veterinary rehabilitation and help you take your practice to the next level. Hey vet rehabbers, one thing we truly care about at Onlinepethealth is teamwork in veterinary rehabilitation. When you start your practice, it might be just you, but as it grows, you'll have a team of people working with you. Now, managing a team with different personalities can be challenging, but as the leader, it's important to set a good example. Amy, Newfield and I chat about ways to handle difficult team members, what to do when your team is toxic, and how to keep your team happy in the long term. I'd love to invite you, if you have not already, to come and join us on Facebook. We've got 4 groups. We have the Small Animal Vet Rehabbers, the Hydro Vet Rehabbers, Equine Vet Rehabbers, and our Business Vet Rehabbers. This is where the vet rehabbers hang out online, share research, tips, and advice, and it's a really great supportive community, and we'd love to have you online there with us. Before we head over to my interview with Amy, a quick word from our sponsors. Paw Prosper believe true pet well-being demands a 3-pronged approach: prevention, support, and rehabilitation. Their brands are trusted by veterinarians, universities, and rehab facilities alike. So whether you're looking to train, rehabilitate, or help your pet age gracefully, their brands like Help 'em Up Harness, Fit Paws, Muffins Halo, and Response Systems offer effective, innovative, and proven solutions. Learn more about how Paw Prosper can help pets age gracefully today at pawprosper.com. So, over to my chat with Amy. Hey, Amy, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Amy, for the listeners, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am obviously Amy Newfield. I'm here out of the United States. Specifically, I live in Massachusetts, which is a cold weather state. I'm a veterinary technician specialist in emergency critical care, but I also have a master's in management and leadership. So I've been in the industry for 25 years and worn many, many different hats. And yeah, so that's a little bit about myself.
So Amy, I stumbled upon you when I was browsing through Amazon and I was looking at books, and your book came up, Oops, I Became a Manager. And I was like, wow, that is like every vet rehab therapist that starts their practice. It's just them, and then they need to get more people to add into the team, and they start employing people, and then suddenly realize you're a manager now of a practice. So tell us about that book and what made you sort of write that. Were you in that stage managing a practice? Is that how it started?
Yeah, so I've never actually managed a practice, but I've managed from a technician side of things, a specialty hospital, and obviously a focus on technicians. I wrote it because personally, I oopsed my way into many leadership roles. The first one was in a general practice, and I just kept saying yes to more things. And then finally, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm a manager, and they gave me a title, but I didn't know what I was doing, made it up as I went along. And as I got more and more leadership roles, I tried desperately to find resources out there, and they just simply didn't exist. There was, 1 or 2 practice manager books for veterinary hospitals, but they were focused on how to make money, how to provide better services. There wasn't anything on developing teams. There wasn't anything on coaching individuals, certainly nothing on conflict resolution. And it even lacked just how to organize your hospital or how to even think about payroll structures and stuff like that. So I decided I'm a bit of a nerd. I pride myself in that. So I decided I needed more information. So I went and got initially a bachelor's degree in business, but that didn't do it for me. So I ended up with a master's in management and leadership. And from there, just decided, to write a book. I've always been a writer. Ever since I was in high school, I was the editor-in-chief of both my high school and college newspaper. And So yeah, just putting pen to paper made sense for me. And I always joked about that title of the book in my presentation. When I would talk about leadership development and culture-based things, I used to put up a slide and it said, "Oops, I became a manager." And I joked and said, if I ever write a book, here's the title of it. And everyone laughed. So even though my editor was very unhappy with the title, I told him that was non-negotiable. We were going to be keeping that title because it's something I had talked about for 10 years. So that's a little bit about the book. So
I mean, that's exactly how it happens, though. I mean, if I think about it, working as vets and practices, what'll happen is those leadership roles are needed to be filled. And the person that's closest or is able to do them the best sort of just has to do them, right? I mean, I worked in one practice where there was actually an employed practice manager. Otherwise, it was usually the vets that had to take, or a head vet tech or vet nurse. So the one that the vet nurse that had been there for the longest and had the most experience, that was the person who took on those leadership roles or the difficult management stuff. And so it really is I became a manager because, that's not what you train for. And it really is just through experience or possibly maybe your personality that is the reason that you become that leader or become sort of more management than the other people in the practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the misconceptions is just because you've been there the longest, or maybe you're the best veterinarian or the best veterinary nurse or technician, that you should be promoted into a leadership role. And that's not necessarily the case. We have to figure out who is able to do the leadership job, because it is very different than being an amazing veterinarian or amazing veterinary technician or veterinary nurse. So it is quite a different role. So providing a resource to individuals was really important for me.
And also, it usually falls on whoever owns the practice. I mean, because usually there is a vet, or like in our instance, with vet rehab, is a vet rehab therapist that owns the practice, and then they start to employ other people, and they're the ones who necessarily have to be the manager because it's their own business. In those kind of situations, what advice would you recommend? So here you are, you've got a vet rehab practice, you are starting to employ people, and you're getting more and more people, and now you're having to manage the people. What advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we are in a very unique business. I don't know if this is the same in other countries, but dentists, for example, are very similarly aligned to veterinarians in that it's the dentist who decides, I'm going to have my own business. This is very unique because the other healthcare sectors, you don't often see, like a board certified surgeon in human medicine opening just his own hospital. That doesn't happen. They're usually owned by companies and administrators and things like that. And so dentists and veterinarians, well-meaning, but maybe not the best at business or leadership. So the biggest thing is educate yourself on what you don't know. And sometimes it's hard because you don't know what you don't know. But I find that, I've seen plenty of wonderful veterinarian friends who have decided to go into business, and they research for maybe 6 months, maybe a year, and how to own a business. That's it. And then they just go do it. But the things that they're lacking is really, how do you coach individuals? How do you actually develop those people? How do you truly make a well-performing business? And what does that look like? And so books, seminars, everything you can get your knowledge on. Once you open your practice, dive into the nuances of how to be the best coach and the best leader, because it's easy when you're a business of one. But once you get those other people, no one has trained us on how to manage them. It's not something that happens in vet school, definitely not as a vet nurse or vet tech. So you have to be proactive in your own education because no one's going to help you. So that's my best advice on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember in my practice, I remember it was just me, and then it was super easy because I knew exactly what was happening. And then I got my first team member, and it was still easy because we were talking all the time, but a little bit more difficult because some of the things, I needed done, I had to explain to her how to do them, and then she maybe wasn't doing them exactly how I wanted, but we could communicate quite easily. And then we got the third person, and I remember then there was a big shift because now there are 3 people, and it's like, no, that person said that, and then it was like become the whole lot more tricky. So from 2 to 3, there was a big jump. The average vet rehab practice is usually 1 or 2, maybe 3 people. So they're pretty small, and there are some vet rehab practices that grow to multiple people and multiple different therapists. But how do you know sort of what person you want to join your team? Because we are in a situation sometimes where we can't actually be that picky, because there aren't enough vet rehab therapists for us to employ. So we're just lucky if somebody applies for the job. And so they're the persons applying, they might not fit together with your core values as much. And you probably maybe will accept them there as a position in your practice, when ideally probably, if you actually had a choice of a number of people, they wouldn't be your first fit. What advice would you give to the vet rehab therapists when they're in that situation?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. And being short-staffed in veterinary medicine, it's a crisis now more than I've ever seen in 25 years. We've always been short-staffed, but now, to your point, you may get one applicant and you need that one person, and it might not be the ideal candidate. So I think on a very surface level, just getting to know the candidate as best you can so that you can prepare yourself the best you can is always a good idea. I hate when employers say to me, can you take this personality test? But honestly, they do have a lot of merit. And so having them do DISC testing or Myers-Briggs, one of the easiest ones out there is 16personalities.com. It's free. You can pay more money and then you can get more of the profile. But on the very free version of it, it's actually pretty good. And that's based off of Myers-Briggs. And I find it to be the least offensive of the personality tests. But we have Caliper, we've got Crystal. There's a ton of personality tests out there. But that one's been around for a while. And that 16personalities.com website has been, it's probably been on the internet for 15 years at this point. It's easy to do. And, it's scary when a potential employer says, can you fill out this personality test? Remembering that there's no perfect personality, but you getting to know a little bit about yourself and then comparing it to that candidate might really tell you, ooh, we're going to butt heads over this. Or, wow, I'm introverted and they are on the very extroverted scale. Is this going to be a good match? How am I going to navigate that? And then having that honest conversation when you do hire them and say, you know what, I just want to share with you my personality traits, because there's only a team of 2 or 3 of us. And I want to talk about, the personality traits that we saw come up and what you think about them. And let's talk about our communication styles. We don't do that enough as human beings. The one thing we have to do every day is what I like to term peopling. We have to people every day, whether we want to or not. And most of us went into this industry because we really do resonate with animals better than we do with people. And so peopling is hard for us in the veterinary industry. I'd much rather just manage animals. If it could just be me, the dog, and the cat, it's fine. But I have to work with a team of people, and I have to figure out how to communicate with each individual person. It doesn't mean I need to be best friends, but I do need to know how to communicate with them, and having that open conversation to say, this is how I like to be communicated to. When there's a conflict, here are some of the things that I might do. I want to continue to have this open conversation with you. And I'm sure they would appreciate it. So I think the big thing is just getting to know the person and building out the relationship from the beginning with open and clear, kind communication is going to get everybody off on a good foot. Otherwise, we're all guessing about what is this person's personality? Is it going to mesh with mine? And it becomes a surprise later on. So I'm always a fan of open communication and just chatting in the very beginning.
That's great. So we actually do DISC assessments at Onlinepethealth. And I must say, it's been really, really helpful because, it teaches you, like you say, the types of people that they are, but also how they think. And so sometimes when you're wanting them to do something, if you're not communicating in the right way with them, then they don't understand you or you trigger them. And that panics them. They get anxious about something, and it teaches you the best way to communicate with somebody. And I think that's a lot of the breakdown in most relationships, whether it be work relationships, your love life, or whatever, is usually due to some breakdown in communication. So if you know how to communicate with someone and you, like you say to them, this is how I like to be communicated with, then I think that's like a few steps ahead, basically, if you can do that. But it's not always like that. And I think also when things get pressured, we tend to forget all those things that we've discussed. So what do we do if we've got a team member and they're just not working out? So our team is just, and you wrote a book about this too. So oops, I've got a toxic team member or something like that, or my team is toxic. Yeah. And so what do we do in that situation? Because, it's really easy to blame a person, to say that's the person that is the problem. But, maybe it's you. Maybe it's you as a manager. You're not doing things correctly. Maybe your team culture is not there. Maybe the circumstances in which you're expecting your team to work are not ideal. Some people are more accepting of it, and this person maybe actually is not accepting it, but they're justified in not accepting it. So how do we approach that situation?
Yeah. Yes, I did write the second book, Oops, My Team is Toxic, because I knew that there was going to be gaps. There's no way I could fit all the information. So the first book was like, here's how to think about organizing your hospital. Here's some good best practices. Here is good, healthy, what it means to be a healthy team. But what happens when the team stops communicating very well? What happens when it starts to go sideways? And what does that look like? And I did get a couple call outs when I launched the book. I had plenty of employees like, it should say, oops, my leader is toxic. And I said, listen, they don't get off scot-free in this book. So it truly is written for helping not only the team, but also the leader. Because to your point, sometimes the leadership doesn't know that they might be the ones who are the problem. More often than not, it's because it's, that single owner doctor who's owning their practice and they get a little burned out, a little crispy, start maybe getting a little short. Maybe they don't appreciate the staff as much as they should, and they don't even recognize it because they're struggling with burnout and they're in such an angry stage of burnout. Like, I can't believe I own this hospital. There's so much pressure. I have so many clients. How am I going to fit everything in? It's a lot of pressure being an owner. So it's hard to stay positive and not burned out at times, especially anybody who owned a hospital or a practice through the pandemic. I mean, that was, how are we going to migrate that or mitigate that? Like, nobody was prepared on how to run a business in 2020, 2021, 2022. And so it's very stressful. So I think the first thing is identifying what is considered toxic, because sometimes we don't even know the toxic traits. And one of the examples I give in the book is the person who's quiet the whole time, who always agrees with everything, who's just, completely quiet at meetings, who just doesn't even seem to care, almost has a sense of apathy. That person doesn't go around gossiping. They're not necessarily negative, but it is a toxic trait when we have people who just don't want to contribute to the team. They just come in, collect a paycheck and go home. And, what does that really say when we need their opinion and when we need them to input? And so we have to identify, the various toxic traits, and then how do we manage that? And it really is one, being able to identify it not only in individuals, but ourselves, and coaching them. And coaching comes with really excellent communication skills. One of the things I was just consulting with it was a technician manager, and she said, Amy, it's like I need to know how to change my communication style for every individual on my team. And I said, you hit the nail on the head of good leadership. Hands down, you need to be able to morph and bend and flex and be a yoga master when it comes to communication, because owning a hospital and managing people is very different than just being a veterinarian or being a veterinary nurse. You have to know how to bend and flex. It's your job to be able to get the team to work together and for you to have the most efficient team. And in order to do that, you have to communicate the best way possible to be able to get through to people, get buy-in, to get the team motivated. And if you only have one style of communication because that's what you're used to, you're going to start to see breakdowns in that team. You have to be able to bend and flex. And I think when we say, oh, well, it's not my job to figure out how to communicate with everybody, we do that innately in our own personal lives. The way that you communicate to your parents or someone in your family is very different than how you communicate to your best friend. Your best friend, how you communicate to that person is very different than how you communicate to clients. Trust me, the things you say to your best friend, you would not say to your clients. And so we have to be able to bend and flex with our employees. So when managers and leaders say, Amy, I don't want to have to like cater to all these people's personalities, I go, but you do anyway. We have to figure out how to do that with our team in order to get the best out of our team. So, yeah.
My manager at Onlinepethealth, it's a conversation exactly what you said now has come up so many times with us. And I must say I don't envy her because we have so many different personalities. And so, yeah, she's continually having to change. And she relies on those DISC assessments. And she is so good at reading them now that she reads the DISC assessment. And, we've just recently had somebody new now that's joined the team. And she's spending loads of time with that person now. And just, she said, now I understand now. I understand her so much better. And just, yeah, it's constant. And I think the thing is that we often, if I go back to when I had practice, so, obviously for the Onlinepethealth manager, that's what she's doing all the time. But I think the struggle comes when you're practicing and you're actually consulting, having to deal with consulting, and then a very small percentage of the time that you have available is managing. And so you just don't have the bandwidth or the energy or the time to be able to go through all of that, right? And to get it right. And I think that's where sometimes maybe we get it wrong, is that we're spending probably 10% of our time managing and leading and the rest of the time consulting and trying to wear two different hats. And it's hard to keep changing them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you bring up one of the biggest roadblocks that I hear all the time, which is it's time. I don't have time to meet with people. I don't have time to do these coaching conversations. I don't have time to, solve their personal problems. I don't have time. And the reality is we have to figure out how to schedule in time. And we are such a, empathetic industry, especially, when you're doing rehab, you've got these post-op patients, a lot of them senior animals, and we're so empathetic because we want to get them moving. We want to get them feeling a lot better for the clients, get them back to whatever it is so that they can enjoy life to the fullest. And especially when you're dealing with senior animals, every moment, counts. So you want to get all the appointments in. You want to cater to every single pet. And it's hard because when we keep catering to the clients and the pets, we take away from the business to some extent. We, know we have to adjust payments and prices and things like that, but we don't have time to do it right now. So we'll just keep going with the old pricing for the next year or 2 or 3. And we haven't kept up with inflation, and we all know prices go up, and we haven't changed them because we have no time. We'll get to it. And then the other side of that is the people part of it. And so the people that are in our team, the performance reviews and the sit-down conversations, we'll get to it, but we reschedule them and we push them off. And it's all because we care so deeply about these pets and the clients, but then our business definitely takes a hit on it. And there's no way to solve the problem other than to back off on sometimes maybe all of the clients and all of the pets and give ourselves some time on the schedule to be able to manage the business. And it's very tricky. I don't have a perfect scenario for you. I just know that the more time we invest in the business and the people, the less problems we have. That is a definite. And so whenever we say we don't have time, I say yes. But then when your 2 or 3 employees are now really angry and threatening to leave your business, that is probably not the time to find time. We probably should have mitigated those problems way before that.
So let's talk about the toxic team member. Let's say, all right, you've identified a person in your team who is toxic. What are the steps that you take now? I mean, like in an ideal situation, when that happens and you're so busy, you just think that person must go, all right? But that's not necessarily the answer. what advice would you give? What are the steps that you would take? You obviously have to assess, why is this team member toxic? What can you do to help? Can you run through like a process for a vet rehabber who is sitting in that situation?
Yeah, the biggest thing is communication. We don't do enough of it. The first thing is we have to get to the why. Why is this person unhappy? Why are they behaving the way they are? Why are they constantly coming in late? Why are they being negative? Why are they gossiping? Why are they doing the things that they are doing? And I think as a leader, we kind of sometimes assume that we know the answer. And, I don't know if assuming translates in other countries as well, but there's an acronym for it. And so we all know what happens when you think about assuming, and it doesn't work out very well. So you have to go to the source and really sit down, come from a place of caring and kindness, and get to the why. What we do is we accuse, and any person who is accused of anything, we all do what every person does, which is to attack back. And that is never the answer. So if we sit down with this person and say, you're coming in late, you're very negative, the other members of the team don't appreciate your attitude, you used to be happier, what's going on? That we've lost the person. You can just dial, forget it, close the door, go home. The conversation is complete wash. Versus sitting down and saying, I really just want to talk to you because I care about you. And we don't have a big team. You're very much part of this team, but you don't seem happy here. What's going on? Because you used to be happy when you came in, and I've just noticed you just don't seem as happy as you used to be. What's going on? Because it's not like you. That says, I care about you. I'm concerned. I've noticed a change in your behavior, and I really just want to hear from you. What's going on right now? And maybe there's something going on we're not aware of, and we need to figure out how to help that individual. Or maybe they just are really angry with the practice, and what does that look like? It maybe they're going to give us some self-reflection. Remember that whatever they say, it's important for us to pause on it and think about it. One of the things we do and we communicate poorly about is we start thinking about our answer instead of just listening to the person. As that person saying, well, you don't care about us in this hospital. All you do is care about money. We work really hard and we've been putting in overtime and I'm not getting paid enough. Our immediate responses in our brain, we start thinking about, wait a minute, I do pay you enough money. I do care about you. I have so many things that I'm about to say to you as soon as you're done talking. And instead of that, maybe we just put a little bit of a timeout on about what we think we should say. And instead, here's the big things I always tell leaders. I want you to say, remember these 2 sentences, file them into your memory. Thank you so much for everything that you just said. I need to think about what you just said. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I need to think about what you just said. That's it. But that's all you need to say. You don't need to solve the world's problems. You even don't have to respond. Instead, I want you to say, thank you so much for your thoughts. I need to think about what you just said. Give yourself a couple seconds to think, or you can even say, you know what? I need to think about it. I don't actually know how to respond. I want to come back maybe tomorrow or a different time after I can think about what you just said. Because heavy accusations, they run deep, and especially if you're the owner, right? If you are the owner and someone accuses you of not being a good manager or not paying them fairly or not running, the business well, you immediately get defensive. I want you to think about it and then come back. When we, go at them and say, what you're saying is not true, it is their truth. That's what they feel in that moment. So we should honor them for being honest about their thoughts, whether we like it or not, and say, thank you so much for your thoughts. I need to think about what you just said and think about it. And even if you decide to come back and disagree with them, come back when the emotions aren't so hot. That's probably the best advice. But ultimately, we do need to get to the why. And then after we figure out the why, maybe it is something we are doing that we need to change. But ultimately, maybe it's something going on in the person's life. How can we coach that? And then from there, we can't simply just tell them to stop gossiping or being, negative and just be happier. We have to give them the tools and the resources. If they cite that they've been putting in a ton of overtime, they haven't seen their kid in a while, we have to figure out as a leader, how do we get them home and what does that look like? If they're unhappy because maybe rehab wasn't for them, okay, that's fine. Thank you for being so honest. We have to figure out what that looks like, because I don't want you to be unhappy in your job. Like, part of work-life balance is you really loving your job. And if you don't love what you do, then you go home angry about it every day. So yeah, I think it's the first thing about coaching anyone is just getting to the why, but doing so in a place of kindness. And then we can use that as our next stepping stone on coaching that individual.
In your experience, what are the most common reasons that people are unhappy in vet practices?
Yes, I call it the cycle of toxicity. So it's a multifaceted thing. There's, the thing about veterinary medicine is we go into it, again, because we usually love animals more than we love people. And we're drawn to a specific sector because we found that we really love to geek out about it, right? Rehab, you have this niche of really wanting to dive into how to care for this animal and get it back to the active state it was prior to whatever disease, injury, or illness that it currently is, which is amazing. And so, when you find yourself really gravitating to it, it's because you really have a passion for it. The thing is, no matter what happens in that practice, no matter what happens with clients or the team, the two truths are the animals are always there and the rehab and the medicine is always there. They don't go away. We're always super excited about that. We may change passions over time, but veterinary medicine is so cool because even if you decide rehab's not for me, there's another thing that's going to make you super excited. So medicine, animals, they never go away and we always love them. Those are not the things that burn us out. They're not the things that make us negative. They are the things that ignite our passion. So what gets in our way then where we start getting angry? Because if those things are always there, then how can we get angry about it? And it starts off no matter what, veterinarian who opens a practice, no matter what, start of anything, that's where the sunshines and the rainbows and the unicorns are, right? You join a brand new role. You're super excited. You tell your friends and family. You maybe Instagram, Snapchat about it. You tweet about it and you're like, I'm starting a brand new job or I'm opening a brand new business or I'm doing this or that. There's butterflies. It's exciting. And you go in and you feel great. Even when you have an angry client, you still feel great those first couple of months. But then something starts to happen. And it's generally feeling overworked and underappreciated. And those are probably the two big things. It becomes the day in and day out of where clients are very demanding. And unfortunately, we're not feeling appreciated for all of the effort we're putting in. And maybe it's the clients that start to make us feel not so great and not so happy anymore. But it's not just one bad day of clients. It's, a cumulative effect of, unfortunately. And then, unfortunately, the other people around us start to feel the same way. And it becomes this team of angry, cranky, negative people. Can one bad apple ruin the entire bunch? Absolutely. They've done plenty of psychological studies that one person can bring down a whole team. And so if you have that one team member who's bringing down the whole bunch and you're like, can one person really be ruining my whole business? Yes, they can absolutely be. So it's really important for us to stop the cycle of toxicity as soon as we start noticing maladaptive behaviors, people coming in late, cranky comments, people feeling, unappreciated, and go back to, I appreciate you. Let's talk about it. Are you feeling burned out? You need to come to me when you are. Getting those things, under wraps before they spiral out of control is really important because the end part of the cycle of toxicity is when people then start saying, this practice doesn't deserve me. They do not appreciate me, and I am not making as much money as I should. And money's always at the end of the cycle of toxicity, where I literally just had this conversation with a technician and they said, I would be a better tech manager if they paid me more money. And I was like, that's not how that works. And let's talk about it because it's not about the money. You are now officially at the end of the cycle of toxicity where you have been feeling so undervalued, underappreciated, burned out. Now you're angry about it and you're blaming money. But listen, not that money can't buy happiness, because it definitely can. People who say that money doesn't buy happiness are delusional. It definitely helps and leads to happiness, but there's a whole bunch of other things that led up to it before we start blaming money. And so we've got to get to those other things. I would say overworked is probably the number one. And then very quickly, if everybody starts feeling overworked and overwhelmed, it becomes very negative, and then everybody drags down everybody, where they come in the morning and go, I can't believe we're here again. They go home at night dreading the next day. And then we just feel, we've completed the full cycle of toxicity. So,
yeah, thanks for explaining that. So it's really interesting. So when people are saying it's money, that's really right at the end. There's a whole lot of other things before then. They're just not aware. Then I think you're right. Like when people are in that state, even if you double their money, probably for a few weeks, they might be a little bit happier, but then they would just go back to the same place because that's not the actual reason, like you say.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great advice.
I've seen too many practice owners, like when they hear from employees, I just need to be paid more. And I would be, that's why I'm so angry. They throw money at the solution. They thinking that's the solution. And in reality, unfortunately, it doesn't fix the culture-based issues. It hasn't fixed the burnout. It hasn't fixed the issue that this particular person's uncomfortable dealing with angry clients and they're really stressed out about it. We haven't gotten to the root of the problem. And so throwing money will definitely make them happier for a couple of weeks and maybe even a month or two. But then they're just going to get angry again. And then we haven't done anything to fix the problem. So
great advice. Okay, so let's say we have a happy team. How do we keep them happy? How do we stop that from happening?
Yes, we need to check in with people. And again, this is where we go back to that conversation of, I don't have time to check in. I'm so busy. I'm running this business. I don't have time to check in with people. I am telling you, you need to make time because it will save you time in the long run. If you can keep your employees happy, if you touch base with them, if you truly connect with them, even every other week, no less than once a month. Once a month, we should be sitting down for at least 30 minutes, maybe an hour, really getting to know every employee, asking them their opinion on what you think could be done differently. Is there something I can do better as a leader for you? What are your career goals? I want to keep you here. How can I continue to make you happy? What does that look like? Really getting to know people. And again, addressing problems earlier is going to save you tons of time, because once they get really cranky and then you lose that person, now you're short-staffed. Now you can't see as many people. Now the rest of the team is having to pick up the slack. Now they're getting burned out because they're short-staffed, and it becomes a horrible, vicious cycle. So it is really important that we get to know our team and really cultivate a healthy culture. And on that, the people who are doing great have a culture, and having a culture is really important. Your culture should have a feeling behind it. And we should also make sure that we continue to have that great positive feeling. So I always give the example, and hopefully this translates. Do you have the car Subarus over there? Do you have Subarus over there as a vehicle?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, when you think of a Subaru, hopefully your Subaru commercials are very similar to our Subaru commercials. You'll never see someone in a tuxedo. You'll never see someone in a dress going to a fancy dinner. You're going to see a Subaru driving on dirt roads. You're going to see him on pavement, taking a turn, going into the woods. You're going to see camping gear, people in jeans. You're going to see yoga pant wearing people. You're going to see yoga stuff going in and out of cars. It's very active. It's very much like a sports utility kind of vehicle they want you to know. You get a sense of who Subaru is by watching the commercials and seeing ads, because they very much have a defined culture. Apple products, when you think Apple, whether or not you're a Windows user or you're a Mac user, you think Apple, you have a sense of what that feels like because they have a culture. So for everybody who owns a business, you need a culture. Like, what does that feel like to you? And the best run businesses, people know they have a feeling. It feels like a family, or it feels like a team, or we drive to excellence on X, Y, and Z for rehab. There's a sense of feeling, and that drives people to that center goal all the time. And so we have to maintain that by emphasizing it, doing fun things, rallying people around our culture all the time in order to maintain it. So yeah, great question. Once you have that great culture, don't lose it. Don't lose it.
Yeah, so those get-togethers are sort of like appraisals, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what about team building? I mean, do you recommend that vet practices go and do team building? I mean, it's a very corporate based thing. I mean, I've never in my whole life that I've worked at a vet practice ever done any team building. But as you were talking now, I was thinking, that's the kind of things that we should actually be doing. But we can never do it because we can never close the practice because somebody always has to be there, right? And all those animals, they have to be treated.
Yeah, absolutely. Team building is important. I think one of the things that I've really truly advocated in the last 5 years is we have to get away, even though I use the term family, we have to get away from the family analogies and really start thinking about team sports analogies. Like, think about the best sports teams on the planet and think about what they do before a game, in the middle of the game, and the end of the game. They always huddle. They huddle and they align themselves over that central goal, which is obviously to win. But they're going to do it by bringing everybody together and reminding everybody we are one unit. We're one team. We're amazing. And even I love when hospitals get really busy in the middle of the day, and they go, hey, time out. Let's just get everybody together. First of all, how's everybody doing? Did everybody get lunch? Hey, you guys are doing great. You're doing fantastic. I know today's been a super stressful day, but, let's just remember, here's why we're here. Here's what we're doing today. Look at all the great stuff we're doing. Go out, go get them, team, So I love when hospitals do that, just realign the team. And team building is really important. Even sports teams will do team builders. They'll sit down, they'll get to know each other. They stretch together, they exercise together, they eat together. They do those things together because it builds the team so that when they're all playing on the field together, when it's not going great because the other team, maybe the clients, maybe outside, roadblocks are beating us up and trying to take our win, we all know exactly what we're supposed to be doing because we know each other better. I know that when you say team building, you think corporate, but there's something fun about, going to an escape room together and, hopefully getting out of the room together or, maybe not being successful, but you learn about each other and you get to bond and have a silly moment. And I think it's super fun. I love potlucks. I love escape rooms. I love getting to know each other more because the more we know each other, the better we we become with communication. And then when we have a really bad day, clients are very much misbehaving. We've squeezed in 3 extra appointments and we're really tired and everybody's on each other's last nerves. We can dial back to, hey, remember how we had so much fun? We do know how to communicate together. We've got this. It's okay. And then realigning everybody back on that core concept that we're trying to, what's our goal? What are we doing today? And how are we driving towards it? It's really important. So yeah, I do like team builders. Within reason, so that employees don't feel like they're trapped at a team builder, but are having fun.
And I think also it doesn't have to be like a whole day affair. I think sometimes even just having a team dinner, just like not only when it's Christmas, right, your Christmas dinner, but just a team building, like when things have been going well or, or even just to connect. And you can do that in the evenings when the practice is closed. Amy, it's been so great chatting to you. And I've loved chatting about both of your books and all the content. You've got so much amazing, amazing stuff to share. So I'm going to go and buy those books because just what I've learned from today has been absolutely awesome. So it's Oops, I'm a Manager. Oh, is it? Oops, I'm a Manager.
Oops, I became a manager.
I became a manager. And Oops, my team is toxic. So any of the listeners, if you guys are interested in those books, I'm going to put the links in the description. Amy, thanks for your time. It's been absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a true honor.
Take care. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about all things vet rehab. A big thanks to our sponsor, Paul Prosper. Their sponsorship allows us to be able to give this podcast to you for free. Please go and check them out. You can go to paulprosper.com. Don't forget to bookmark the next Vet Rehab Summit. It's on Friday the 10th and Saturday the 11th of November. Come and be a part of the world's largest online veterinary rehabilitation conference. It's created specifically for you, the vet rehabber community. Onlinepethealth members, you get VIP complimentary access to the Vet Rehab Summit. For more information and continued education for vet rehabbers, you can go to onlinepethealth.com.